Hello. It's 4 o'clock. Yeah. We made it all the way to 4 o'clock. My name is Mark. I got some weird stuff to go over with you. And I want to get to the weird stuff toward the end. So I'm going to make sure I'm probably going to whip through some of this stuff. I keep adjusting the talk. I was even removing slides about an hour ago, to kind of tighten it up a little bit. But anyway, I work at, Duo Security. I am a researcher. I work in the Duo Labs department. Duo Security is the two-factor authentication people that are not that other company that rhymes with RSA. Darn, I gave it away. Anyway, we're the one that doesn't suck as bad as their stuff does. Okay, so anyway, that's my sales pitch. That's why I'm in research and not in sales, by the way. Anyway, this talk has nothing to do with 2FA. So, premise of the talk, because it's about IoT, I just want to point out that most IoT research is not very important. Okay? This is going to be a little bit of a different tone than some of the other talks, but most of it's not. And also because I get a little bit ranty at times. If you haven't seen Bruce Potter's F-bomb laden talk, if you didn't see that yesterday, watch it on YouTube. It's a nice companion piece to this one. And also Daryl Highland, his talk yesterday. Was it yesterday on IoT? That was decent because he talks about how to do some of the stuff. He doesn't focus so much on what he's breaking. He's talking about how he's breaking stuff. So those are kind of nice companion ones. So if you haven't seen those talks, I think they're actually online now. They're real quick about putting stuff up. But anyway, most IoT research is not important. No one cares if you can hack a thermos and trick someone into telling their app the thermos is half full when they can look at it and see that it's full. So, harder targets are a lot more interesting, and there are targets out there that are actually more important. Okay? Ones that may have security implications outside the scope of the device itself. The device actually might have something to do with security. There may be privacy implications. Those kinds of things are a little bit more interesting. Medical, you name it. All right. I was going to do a whole bunch of stuff involving I had a whole bunch of slides I deleted. I'm going to put them into a blog post on what kind of platform you probably need, because I've done a lot of this, and so there's a lot of choices that there are out there. But that'll go in a blog post. And spoiler alert, you need to run Linux and blah 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 tools. Okay, so let's talk about what IoT looks like in general. This is how I kind of create a visual picture for this stuff. There's the T part right there. There's a routing device of some type, usually a phone, and it goes to the interwebs via communication channels. Typically, a lot of these things do it via, like, say, from thing to routing devices. Usually Bluetooth. It can be Wi-Fi, and then if the routing device is there, it goes from Wi-Fi or whatever to the internet. Now, first thing we're going to talk about is this guy, the Apple Watch. I don't have the new version of it. I've been traveling, so I haven't been around anywhere to buy one yet. I probably am going to do that. I'm going to try to make work pay for it and call it a research project. This is a kind of an interesting thing that I did. I did some research on this. I did the bulk of it a year and a half, 2 years ago. Didn't find anything. Spoiler alert, didn't find anything major. But it's interesting enough because it kind of gives some examples as to the whole premise of looking at hard targets. Because finding the stuff that to prove that they're actually doing it right is, to me, just as interesting as finding the bugs. Okay, and that's kind of an important point. Here's that same diagram with the stuff put in place. The one caveat in this is that the Apple Watch, some people weren't aware of this, but it actually will talk Wi-Fi directly to the interwebs. And of course, the new one will do LTE. I'm sure it'll work great in version 0.1 of that one. So we'll see what happens. They're having some problems with it. Okay. Why would we even look at the watch to begin with? And that's an important thing. Ask why you're going to do this. Well, it's a way to go after the phone, potentially. There are some security elements involved with the phone. Sometimes, there's like the work has a 2FA thing on here that I can use to authenticate, because I can't reach all the way into my pocket, expected to reach into my pocket and authenticate with my phone. That's just too much trouble. And then, of course, it runs all kinds of interesting apps. So just like, well, let's see what we can do with this thing. I did look at the physical security of it, and you'd be surprised how many people don't do this first thing. You take off the watch and the screen locks. When I looked at this thing a couple years ago, at the very first time I looked at this thing, this was a unique feature among smart watches. That just seems to make sense. You take it off, it locks up just like you get a screen lock on it. A lot of them didn't do it. I did work out an elaborate 0-day about how you could remove the watch. If you're like an expert pickpocket, you have to be able to take off undo the strap, and then you've got to get your fingers underneath the watch and touching the haptic sensor at the same time and pull it off the person. And if you can do that without being detected, then that's really cool. It'd be very hard to do. It was hard to do it with me doing it myself, but I was able to do it. And then, of course, the attack vectors, then you could run to Starbucks and use Apple Pay and buy, illicit drinks. So, that's the scenario. Of course, the easier scenario is someone just holds a gun at you and says, hey, we're going to take off the watch in a special way so I can go get illicit drinks. Or more likely, they just say, give me all your money. So not a likely attack. So not something to really report. We start getting into some of the things they really did correct here. These are the 4 pairing methods supported by Bluetooth 4.2. These are part of the 4. If you've ever seen the spec in its PDFs, plural, it's like this thick if you print it out. It's, 2,000-3,000 pages. It's a huge thing. It's a complete, it's not a protocol. It's a grouping of protocols into a mishmash of horrendous spaghetti that somehow works. But in 4.2, the 4 pairing methods are numeric comparison, which is a number appears on both devices and you say, do they match? Yes. Just works. That's like if one of the devices doesn't have a display, like it's headphones or something like that. Just works is the exact same thing as numeric comparison, except the number is 6 zeros. Okay. And then passkey method, one device displays a number, you enter it on the other device. That is the second most secure method. And then the third most secure method is an out-of-band method, where you use some other type of communication other than the Bluetooth part to actually make it happen. The Apple Watch, by default, uses the out-of-band method, the most secure method. And that's where, if you've ever done a pairing, you've seen you hold your phone over with the app up, and it looks at a swirling display of magical, mystical bits being swirled around on the watch. And so there's like the out-of-band method is a visual thing using the camera. Very cool. And their second part to do is their second method as a backup is the passkey method. So they use the 2 most secure methods allowed, with the most secure method being the default, which is good. This slide is for the people in the back of the room. This is a sniff using Ubertooth. By the way, when you're doing the pairing, if you can't get the sniff right because it's doing the frequency hopping thing and Ubuntu's trying to chase it and all that kind of stuff. You have to start over. If you miss a packet and you get off on the hop or whatever, you don't get a complete trace. This took literally all day because it's 15 minutes to wipe the watch and start over. Okay. So this was literally all day. This is like, I think about the 15th try or something for that day. I did manage to get, and this is the passkey method. And what's cool about it, the packet that I have highlighted there for the people in possibly the front row to see, the slides will go up somewhere, so you'll see them eventually. But it's after it does that passkey method, it immediately starts encrypting everything, and that is because they implemented LE privacy. LE being the low energy. There used to be Bluetooth, and which they called Bluetooth Classic for a while, and then Bluetooth Low Energy. They're all lumped together now. As of I think 4.0 is when they put it all together. But anyway, in 4.2 there is this whole process. They implemented that on the Apple Watch, which means that every 15 minutes it changes the advertising MAC address. Okay, that's pretty cool. It makes it a little bit harder to track the thing. They also do a Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and they do it every 15 minutes. And this was surprising as hell that they went to this much trouble to do it. All right, so, and finding this out and proving them right was a massive pain in the butt because you've got to sniff this stuff. And it's very hard to track. It's very hard obviously it'd be very hard to decrypt traffic. So they put a very, very solid thing in place in there, for these, apps on the watch to work and talk to the phone. All right. The Wi-Fi part of it that works, starting with watchOS 2.2, the Wi-Fi improved greatly. It supported, there were some problems with WPA2 early on. And basically, as long as you're not going through a paywall or some type of accept our terms page on a website, if the phone has connected up and talked to the access point, the watch gets that information and the password and stores it securely on a chip inside there. And then if the phone then becomes out of range of the watch and the watch is in range of the access point, the watch will talk to the internet. And that was fun to look at and play with, because I was figuring, oh well, certainly they screwed that up. And no, most encrypted traffic used sane choices. For the most part, I don't think anyone, this is kind of references something Bruce was ranting about in his talk, I don't think anyone actually has done a downgrade attack on a TLS outside of a lab and got a credit card number and then gone and used it, because it's much easier and cheaper to, like I said, use a gun and give me your credit card, or buy it on the dark web for a small amount of Bitcoin. Very little was in plain text. Okay. Location services did some GPS type stuff. The creepy Wi-Fi thing that goes on with your phone, and other devices do this too, not just the Apple Watch, but where they'll do plain text calls and use the fact that you can see certain access points. That whole thing of turn on Wi-Fi, it improves the accuracy of your GPS. They can use that and determine exactly where you are based on a not so super secret database of wireless access points and whatnot, and determine where you're physically located. But other stuff does this. I did some research with those Chinese phones, and they or I was telling someone earlier about these Chinese phones I somehow managed to get a hold of, and they were reporting they were going to was it Baidu Baidu.com, I think is the Chinese company. Yeah, they were using Baidu.com to do this stuff, and most of the stuff in the U.S. uses something like a Google site to be able to do this. So you could, if you wanted to, man in the middle, just the GPS location, you could play with the watch that way, make it do stuff. There's a few other like bits and pieces that you could throw stuff in, but nothing substantial. A few PNGs and things like that are used by the Maps application, but nothing, and it didn't break anything by doing that. And I did see the Apple push notification service. I did see one of the a plist come over with that app. It was in plain text, but it was signed. So just like, okay, well, that's good. By the way, they do that stuff in plain text, I think, for to prevent caching and that kind of stuff. That's the main reason why they don't encrypt it. So, and everyone does it. So, and they did certificate pinning and everything else. It's just like really good stuff. This is another screenshot for the back row of, basically what this is this was a packet trace of the watch talking Wi-Fi, and it's, you can go in and see that they're making sane choices with the algorithms and whatnot. So my conclusion when I told work, I said, hey, I didn't find any bugs, and they're just like, okay, well, we're probably not going to release the paper then, because, they wanted bugs. But I think because I think the mood is right for that, because this was my absolute conclusion. Now, let's talk about something that's possibly a little bit more interesting, something I worked on. This is the Milwaukee Tool M18 drill driver with one key. One key is their smart implementation of the tool. Okay. This is their smart tool. All right. All right. You're saying just why. And that's great, because that is the reality. I mean, when I was telling one of my coworkers, says, yeah, I'm going to be working on the tool. And they says, oh, wait, you mean that wasn't a joke? I was like, yeah, there you go. Well, let me go through and I'll show you how this is our same little map here, the drill that talks to your phone. There's an app on your phone, and the phone talks to the cloud, an instance of Milwaukee Tools cloud, and it uses Bluetooth and Wi-Fi where you expect it. Why are we even looking at the tool? All right. Well, I'll tell you why. All right. I don't know if you're familiar with Milwaukee Tool. If anyone here does any type of woodworking or construction, if you are doing it for a living and you're using these tools for a living, you're going to be using Milwaukee Tool or DeWalt a real high-end tool. Anyway, so this is what Milwaukee is. Very high-end tool. So obviously if I can scan for one and identify one via, a Bluetooth scanner, I've just found a cache of expensive tools, even if they've only got one of these ones with Bluetooth. So it's just like, I want to take a look at this for partially just that reason. Also, there's physical security elements, like I just mentioned. This thing's expensive. It can be stolen. It's mobile by nature. It comes with a battery. You carry it around and you do stuff. I almost hate to use this, but I did put it in quotes. It's considered a disruptive type of technology, all right, to use such terms, because this is likely going to be the model for tools going forward. So if any of you work in a company large enough to have a shop where, there's people that have to build stuff in your company, then you're going to see some of the traffic from these freaking tools on your network. So
why does this product exist? What does it do?
What does it do? Okay, so we'll get to that. Now, this is let's bring up the picture here, and then also let's bring up a couple other things here too. Now, if you look on the picture on the left, you notice a 1, 2, 3, 4 next to the little lit up blue, Bluetooth kind of signal there on the light. There's 4 profiles that you can have for the tool that are built in, because it has, the RPM and torque, and you can adjust those with much more granular than you could with just like setting it on the tool. And you do that on the app on the phone, and then you push it down to your tool. Still not enough to say why. All right. Still not enough. I know. Now, they also upload this stuff from the app to the web. Okay. So you can look at your profiles on the web. Oh, that's really exciting. Okay. Now, it'll trust me, it'll start to get a little more interesting. You have, the ability to attach a photo to your tool profile. All right. So you can take a picture of your tools in case you forget what it looks like, I guess. But you can also do things like you can take a picture of the receipt and attach that to it. And so you've got, when you bought it, and you can kind of, like say you're going to do regular maintenance on your tools, or you want to take it back after, so much time, then you've got a copy of the receipt, so to speak. This is not the only tool they make that has this one key stuff on it. They got several other things, that do this. Now, you're a contractor, all right? Let's say you got 4 of these drills, all right? And you got a crew out and you're doing some contracting job. And you got a couple of guys that are over tightening some screws, some wood screws, and it's causing cracks in the wood. All right. And I'm giving this as an example because I'm basically relaying a story that I read on a web forum that talks about tools. Some guy going nuts over how great this thing is. And what he did was he went in, he tweaked the torque and the profiles and pushed it down to all the tools. And then that prevented him from having to keep going back and doing this. Plus, he knew which guys were doing it because you can track status of the tools. Okay. Like it's ready to be checked out. It was checked out by someone, and then you can fill in their name so you know who's holding the tool at that time. So you know that, you put down Bob because Bob checked it out. You can list it as down for maintenance, and you can also mark it as lost or stolen. And this is where it becomes really interesting. Whenever the application that's running on the phone sees the tool, every 3 to 5 minutes, it uploads GPS coordinates to the web. All right. So anyone that has that app on their phone, even people that don't own that particular tool, if they got the app on their phone and they are near a Milwaukee tool phone, it uploads and goes to the web. So you got kind of assuming everyone has, a specialized contractor's app on your phone, then you've got kind of a Find My Tool kind of thing. All right. So that does kind of, it's a stretch, mind you, but it does we'll get to what you can do with it remotely in a second. Don't jump ahead too quick. The industry loves this, okay? And they're going nuts. And in response to the industry, when I say the industry, the tool user industry loves it. All the competitors are scrambling. The other thing Milwaukee did, and this is a really smart thing, is they have this thing that's about the size of a challenge coin. It's called the tick. And you can attach that to any tool that's not a smart tool, and you can at least do all that inventory stuff with it, okay, including competitors' tools. All right. So now it becomes kind of interesting. All right. That's where things really begin to get kind of interesting, because you can track and look at all these different tools. Now, let's go into some of the things that are interesting about it. First thing you'd say, well, I want to scan for it and find one of these tools so I can go and steal it. Because, that's what I thought anyway. I don't know if anyone else thought of that. But this is using a freeware tool on a phone. This is Punch-Through made this utility called Light Blue Explorer. It's worth downloading. It's fun and easy to play with. And if you look up at the very top, the peripheral name ends with MKE. MKE means Milwaukee, and you probably can't see it in the back, but the manufacturer string is Milwaukee tool. And it gives a model number, the BLE 112, which is if you Google that and you do some other probes, like with some other Bluetooth tools, you can quickly determine that Blue Giga is the chip, the Bluetooth chip thing that's inside the tool, and the BLE 112 is actually the model number of the chipset. You can do a little more scanning on it, and you can get the revision of the firmware and everything. And so, very quickly I was able to hone in on stuff I can start looking at and trying. I don't have to just throw the kitchen sink at this thing. I can get really specific because I know what chipset it is already, and I haven't even opened up the tool. In fact, I didn't want to tear it apart because it's a really nice tool, and I got to keep it after it was, it's still in my physical possession. I didn't get to keep it. But, look, they want to include it as a part of their inventory. Yeah, I may need to continued research, just long research. How does it hold up under regular use, for example, around my house? Yeah. Anyway, again, another picture for the back row. I used man in the middle proxy, and in the paper they used certificate pinning, by the way, which was really good. And so I had to defeat that, and I had to get the APK, decompile, do some stuff, recompile, sign, upload to the Android phone. And then I could use the man in the middle proxy and start looking at stuff. And the part that's interesting about this is the no sniff option for the content type options. That's good, because that prevents from changing MIME type. By the way, most stuff where it's apps talking to web or talking to the web is just web protocols is all they're using. The X-frame option set to same origin prevents click tracking. Cross-site scripting protection is set to prevent cross-site scripting attacks and stuff. So they actually tried to kind of as best they could lock down the app. There's other things in there. I'm just kind of skimming through it. Well, it's not that they're going to pop an alert box on the drill, but they could possibly do something to the app to affect data in some form or fashion, in theory. Okay, it's a stretch. Also, the thing is that they were using the OK HTTP library because, as you know, most apps are written using that real popular language that's out there right now. What's it called? Cut and paste, I believe is what is called. So they just used that library, and that actually solved a lot of their security problems. So that kind of helped. The bad thing is up at the very top in the long red box, that is a basic auth thing going on there. That was hard-coded into the app. Darn. Yeah. And that was found with the infamous research tool grep-r. Within about the first 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, first thing you do, you download the APK, decompile, and you start grepping for common things like, authentication, password, that kind of stuff. Anyway, this was found fairly quick. They had, I don't know if you can tell they use this to do the authentication from the phone app itself to the web. Okay? This is not for the user to talk. This is just for the phone app. That's an important point. Now, the user themselves, in here, I've got the throwaway account, email address that I use as the username. I got that blacked out, but the password, I normally, when I'm doing testing and stuff, it's usually Hunter2, and this one had a requirement of it had to have a minimum of 8 characters, a minimum 1 uppercase, and 1 number. So, Hunter with an uppercase H, 22, and that met the requirements for that. Well, that's because I haven't cut and pasted it. I'm glad someone got that reference. once the user is authenticated, they get a bearer token, and bearer tokens typically they're supposed to expire after 1 or 2 hours. This one, that first red box there shows that it expires in 1 year. Okay, so that's bad, and it's stored on the phone. And then down at the bottom, there's a user ID in there, which is good for the session for the life of the bearer token. And that thing is in UUID format, the random version. I don't know if you're into UUIDs. There's a process for doing random. Anyway, it's set up that way. They did that part right. Well, but anyway, so there were a few problems with the tool. The conclusions from my doing this research, and I did do a full paper on this, and I have a link at the end of the presentation on that. The paper has an appendix that goes into great detail about how to do this, how to defeat certificate pinning. So that's kind of a handy thing. But the link will be in there at the end. For the stored credentials in the app, got a CVE for that, and then the long-lived bearer token, a CVE for that. The other two problems was being able to easily fingerprint the tool via Bluetooth scanning, and you could spoof GPS, and that is because you could just set up a dummy account, and then all you had to do was sniff, and there was enough information scan. There's enough information from Bluetooth scanning to be able to, between that and then, getting on there and having of course you got the pseudo master password in the app itself. You got enough information there to send false GPS information back into the main server. So they could say, hey, the tool is stolen, and then you could have a script running that every 3 to 5 minutes says, no, it's not. It's right there in the toolbox, or no, it's not. It's at my enemy down the street's house, whatever. Vendor notification for this, the vendor never directly responded to me. Okay. This is the other problem with IoT stuff. This is a big problem with IoT stuff. They're not used to our world. Okay. For IoT, it is, we're going to disclose like it's 1999. Okay. That's how it's going to go. Normally at Duo, we give 90 days, which is roughly standard. In this case, we went over 120 days. They had no easy way to report bugs. I went on forums that they were active on. I used the address to report flaws. I wrote a pseudo review where I said, hey, you're getting 3 out of 5 stars. And this is for their app. I said, I found some security issues. Who do I contact? Can you contact me? And nothing. At the 45-day mark, I involved U.S. CERT. That's right. I involved U.S. CERT, your tax dollars at work, going in and telling a tool company that there's a vulnerability in their tool. Now, they got a minimal response, probably because they're U.S. CERT. Okay. But it took them a bit to get a response out of them. So the vendor, through them, I was able to verify all the bugs. No indication that they're going to patch. I had the guy's email that was responsible for this stuff. He never replied to any email that I sent him. It just kind of sad how that worked out. But that's the thing you kind of have to keep in mind with this stuff. Particularly with the things where it's like it's a high dollar item like this, or something like the Apple Watch. You got to try harder. And so that's kind of why we tried a little bit harder in this case. Apple knows better, and that was obvious. They covered their bases pretty well, particularly from a network standpoint. But just these guys really didn't respond that well. So let's get weird, okay? This is because the thing is, there's weird tech that exists now, and most importantly, IoT is going to become I. All right. And from a security standpoint, as researchers, that is critical. Okay. IoT is going to become I mean, there's going to be a day when your grandchildren are going to come to you and they're going to say, Grandma, Grandpa, there's something wrong with the toaster. I got my toast and there was no weather report written on the toast when it came out. There's no picture on the toast when it came out. And you say, well, that's because this one doesn't do that. That's because smart toasters will just become toasters. And that's what you will have. And the old toasters will become antiques or retro or vintage or something like that. Maybe grandma's estate sale will be really a thing that they fight over in the future, because it's just like, wow, there's all these things that don't have IP addresses. It's great. Let's look. I mean, we already do it now, right? We're already headed down this path now. And that's because, all right, it's just almost pointless, but, hands up, how many people have a phone? All right. And pretty much everybody, right? I didn't say cell phone or smartphone. I just said phone. You all raised your hand. You got a phone on you. Okay. And, we used to call them smartphones. We just now call them phones. Now, I have a phone at my house that you guys would refer to as a landline. All right. Because, I've got gray hair, so that means you have to have a landline. It's in our contract, But, so, I mean, this is the way we're kind of heading. So we have to keep security and research in mind as we move forward. Okay, back to our light blue Explorer. Previously, I did a talk over a decade ago about, doing weird shit, scanning on a plane, and so this is mid-flight, and the top peripheral up there, if you look at it, is Callie's hearing aids. I'll let that sink in with my Bluetooth scanner, and if you look here on the next,
Right here.
you got him? Oh my gosh.
The security on this thing is atrocious.
Okay, we
I'm waiting for somebody to beam arbitrary sounds into my head.
oh god damn it, you stole my joke. Because that was what, because here I am. I've connected up to Callie's hearing aids. All right. I'm connected. Because I'm grabbing data off of there, Resound, was the vendor. Do you have a Resound or something else? Okay. All right. Yeah. All of them have fairly atrocious security, the ones that I've seen. I'm trying to get work try and convince work. I need hearing aids, but here's the interesting thing is that during the flight, oh, by the way, the joke was, Callie, this is God. Give the gray-haired fat man in 18C all your money. Yeah, but I didn't do that. But the first thing that came to mind. but anyway, later in the flight, I can only assume that it was Callie's iPad that she got out, because it was called Callie's iPad. She gets it out, cause it's just the Apple naming thing. That's what they're doing. And she gets that out and she starts watching a movie. She did not get out headphones. She did not, because her hearing aids functioned as headphones as well. It's like, ooh, that's cool. You can take phone calls anywhere. You can hear anything. I can jump on a conference call for work, some dreary thing I don't want to listen to, but I have to be there just in case they say my name or something. I can be in a noisy environment. I can be in a bar. It doesn't matter, because I've got this, I've got these hearing aids that function this way. So you start thinking about where you could go with that kind of tech. All right. I got this friend of mine, and I'm pretty sure he's the one that told me this story. His name is Richard Thiem. He speaks at a lot of the conferences. You see him at DEF CON every year. He told a story about I think it was his son or his son's friend had gone to a place in Silicon Valley. They went into to visit this guy at work. And in there, they had this like warehouse full of, there was like these glass cake pans, like this, made out of glass, Pyrex looking things. And they're just like all spread out on tables in this, warehouse. And they, all inside them, they were filled with pink goo. And they had inside each one of them a living headless frog. And all the frogs were identical because they were all clones. All right. And the question was, what are you doing? And the response was, practicing. Okay. So that makes you think. Okay. Now, I think there's probably a few people in here that are familiar with anime, and they're familiar with science fiction and our favorite movies. So we know that the Japanese are going to do the first human clones, right? And they're going to be really good at it, okay? Because that's just what's going to happen because we get all our information from comic books. So, and I'm thinking that I think I would like to have a headless clone of me, because I would genetically alter it to be better. So, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm diabetic, all right? So I could get a new pancreas, slap that in there. My headless clone is going to have 3 livers, all right? So as I blow through those, just slap in another one. All right. It's going to be a liver drinking game. This is yeah, exactly. Yeah. But this is kind of, my point is that, kind of like Callie, and others who are in the room, we are slowly becoming hybrids. And it's not just you that are a hybrid. Everyone in here is already starting to do it. How many people put their cell phone in the same pocket? A lot of people do. All right. But more importantly, you can tell the difference between a phone call and a text message, right? When it starts to vibrate, you know the difference. With this, the haptic feedback sensor on the Apple Watch, there's 4 different alerts I can recognize without even looking at it. I'm already, my body is teaching me what's going on with the technology that's tied to me, so to speak. And the haptic feedback sensor here, that haptics, stuff that's been around for a while. This isn't like old technology. Or not new technology. This is kind of a little older, ancient by technological standards. There's haptic shirts. Most of the people that are buying them, they're doing like they're real fitness nuts and stuff like that. So as soon as I get one of those in my size, I might get one. They don't make them in American, apparently. So or Heartland, or because I'm from Texas, so it's a Texas size shirt. It's gonna have to be, but. I'd love to get one that's hackable. Right now they just kind of cue off of your body, but, to have it tap you on the right shoulder or my left shoulder. If you get a text message, right shoulder. If you get a phone call, if you're monitoring some systems and they get compromised, maybe a slide up the back for a nice shiver to alert you. You start doing that. Now you start thinking there's also a technology called jawbone microphones. Some of you are nodding. You've heard of these things, with a jawbone microphone and Callie's hearing aids, you could take a phone call inside a noisy concert, and they would hear you perfectly, and you would hear them perfectly. Okay, and that's fascinating. Okay, you could take a haptic shirt, and with that kind of other technologies that might be interesting. The jawbone microphone obviously was going to end up becoming an implant. Okay. Or at least some type of piercing jewelry, or, maybe something you shove up your nose, a nose ring or whatever, so you gotta, dig it out of your nose to charge it every night. But nonetheless, I mean, you don't want to sleep with a wire in there. You're not an animal, right? But I mean, nonetheless, that's where everything is kind of, heading. And they're doing wonderful things with eyes and whatnot. So, I mean, you start talking about implants in the eyes, so we can get vision as good as, like, say, fish or birds, who have much better vision than humans, because they're a little further along on the evolutionary chain. This could be pretty neat. Now, of course, all this stuff is either going to talk through whatever we're going to be calling the phone in the future, because the phone already is becoming a router. Okay, it plays cat videos too and stuff, but I mean, it's essentially a router for all of our stuff going to the internet. Although it did surprise me, because sometimes in these talks, I did one on Tuesday at the ISSA thing that went on Tuesday, and in that one I was talking about predictions that I was making. One of my predictions had been that that LTE was going to come to all these various devices, such as the Fitbit, because I know it's on the roadmap. I actually talked with someone there at Fitbit, and they said we're eventually going to have LTE, so we don't need the to go through your phone. And the Apple Watch beat them to it, which is it was interesting. But there you go. But all of this security is going to be a really important part to this. Now, it's all kind of hodgepodge what I just talked about. Where I think it'll really will come to fruition is thanks to the military. I think that's where things will really come out. I don't know why this isn't the case now. It would make sense that if you have a firearm, that it's biometrically linked to you. That way someone else can't use it. I think that would be kind of a cool thing. It's going to be the Army that's going to do that, so that the enemy can't do that, goofy, Call of Duty thing where you drop your gun and then you go and someone else picks it up and starts using it. No, that won't happen in the future. That doesn't even make sense. Okay? You think in the future there'd be some kind of thing. You just go up, you're biometrically linked, you pull it out of the charger in the transport, you get out, you've got your heads-up display from the implants in your eyes, so you got that full Call of Duty thing. Or Halo, sorry. I mean, just some people are Halo fans. Yeah. But nonetheless, I mean, that's kind of, and all the other things I've talked about where they can receive, the hearing aid thing, getting that to where you take sounds that maybe they can't hear, or sounds that are, like ultra frequency, upper, lower frequency that they normally is not in the human hearing range, either pulling that down into human hearing range or tying it in with the biometrics, and the haptic feedback sensors in the shirt. Okay. My goal is to one day, because as an American, I'm not supposed to say this, but I am a terrible driver. I'm just not good at it. Sorry. You guys probably would honk at me. My wife hates it when I drive. I usually let her drive because I'm terrible at it. My dream is to be able to get into a car in the back seat. Okay. All right. And the car is going to drive me where I need to go. We've got an office in Austin. I live up in the Dallas area. I would love to be able at 5:00 in the morning, be able to go out, get in the back seat of my car and just say, wake me up when we get to Round Rock, just outside of Austin. Okay. Because there's a Starbucks there. and let's go to Starbucks in there and just have the car drive there for me while I sleep in the back. Maybe my doctor contacts me on the way because he says, we've noticed from the sensors that we have inside you that are based off of military technology that you're coming down with an infection. So there's a CVS at the next exit. We're going to have you exit there, go in. It's already paid for. Your insurance has covered it, whatever. And then you go and you pick up your medicine, you take it, you go get back in the car and continue on your way. That's the kind of future that we're going to have. Okay. None of the stuff I've talked about here is outlandish. It's all just either it exists now or is extensions of existing technology that we already have. That's all it is. Security is going to be very important. So when I say a lot of IoT research is largely unimportant, that's what I'm talking about. There are important things that we need to be looking at. We need to get good at looking at the hard stuff, particularly the hard stuff as a result. As promised, there's the link to the drill paper. And so that will get you to that. We've got, we're pretty much out of time, but we can take a couple questions, I think. Yes. The question was how they pick MAC addresses. Are they still the ones that Apple owns? No, they seem to be somewhat random. They seem to be like not in a normal range. A lot of times they don't seem to show up. They're doing something. I haven't actually gone through and looked at that in great detail. This is, a good reason to continue looking at it just for that reason. That's kind of interesting because you at least spot the Apple device that way. It would probably piss off IEEE. Although, the IEEE doesn't do enough, Bluetooth scanning probably, and they should do more. Yeah, question.
There's a non-global unique bit that they set, so they can choose anything they want.
There we go. He just said the non-global unique bit that they can set, they can choose anything they want. So that works. And that'd be something to queue off of, too, to look for that. Then you've got something that's actually doing something, proper. Or interesting. That's pretty much it. One more question.
What's the chance that Milwaukee outsourced that, the Bluetooth addition to their product and had a contract to do it, and they don't have anybody else?
Milwaukee. The question was, what are the chances that they outsourced the work? They didn't. They had an internal team that worked on it. The guy I was talking with, not talking with the, he worked there, and thanks to the beauty of LinkedIn, because everyone puts everything in LinkedIn, I was able to see that he has coders and stuff that were full Milwaukee Tool employees that were linked to him and worked under him. So, they